Hello, everyone. Well, this evening, because you can't come into me, I am bringing an author to you. Now, it's the first time we've done it this way, so let's hope everything works according to plan. I'll be talking to Kath Kovacic about her most recent release, Miss Fisher's Modern Mysteries, but we will have a lot of other things that I really want to ask Kath about. So sit back, enjoy this, and I'll talk to Kath now. Enjoy. Hi, Kath. It's lovely to see you again.
Hello, Katie. So nice to see you. And I'm looking at all the books in the background, and I want the books in the background.
I know, this is what we do. You look at other people's rooms and you go, what's she got? It's dreadful. Kath, we have talked several times, but that you're just such a busy bee. We have another one to talk about today, which is Miss Fisher's Modern Mysteries. And it is a sort of spin-off of the, if that's a word I use without insulting you, Kerry Greenwood's Miss Fisher. So this was originally a TV series. Now, you can correct anything I say if it's a bit wobbly. So how come you're writing this one? And just tell me a bit about how this all happened.
So Miss Fisher's Modern is it's a spin-off series from the original Kerry Greenwood Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries. And so Ms. Fisher is Phryne Fisher's niece, Peregrine Fisher, and she inherits. Well, Phryne disappears in a plane accident somewhere over Papua New Guinea. We're not quite sure what happened. But Peregrine inherits, and so it's a complete spin-off series, and the characters were created by Every Cloud Productions, who do the original Miss Fishers, and so the characters belong to them. They're not Kerry's characters, and she is still, as you know, brilliantly writing the original Miss Fisher series. So it had been in Every Cloud's mind for some time to do a novelisation. That's the word that is used. It's an interesting word, novelisation of the Ms. Fisher series, because they had Series 1 and Series 2 aired on Acorn TV earlier this year. I believe it's coming free to air at some point, but I don't have a solid date on that. And so the idea was to bring out the first Ms. Fisher murder mystery to coincide with season 2 of the television show. And how did I get the gig?
How did you get the gig?
This is a very convoluted story. I actually got a Facebook friend request from a publisher at Allen & Unwin, and my first thought was, of course, scam. And then I did some cyber stalking and internet searching them. Okay, legit. And so accept, yes, mashing the button to accept. And she immediately messaged me and said, could you give me your email address because I want to ask you a question. And so my first thought was that they were going to ask me to write a cover quote, to do a little puff for a book that was something along the lines of my own writing. So, of course, I said yes. And then Annette Barlow, wonderful publisher at Allen & Unwin, sent me an email and said, I'd like to talk to you about a project. Would you mind signing a confidentiality agreement? So that's when I started thinking, this was more than just writing a little cover puff for a book. So confidentiality agreements, then we started having meetings with Every Cloud and discussing the Fisher world and what they were looking for in a writer, what the Fisher fans were looking for in effectively a spin-off series, because the Fisher fan base is very big and very devoted to Kerry, as they should be. And so I did a sample chapter for them in about a month, and they liked the sample chapter. And I did that based on...
Were you working from the sort of the film version of the... Oh, okay.
They gave me the show Bible, which is the outline of all the characters and how they relate to each other and where they fit into the world. And they gave me the first script for the Just Murdered thing, which was about 15 to 20 pages, because it was, I think, a 90-minute episode. And so the idea was that if I got the gig, it would be, the 70,000+ word based on the 15 pages, which is a slightly daunting prospect, but there we go. They liked the chapter I sent them, so we signed a contract, and it was a very quick turnaround too. So this all sort of happened in the middle of last year for a November delivery of the manuscript. So that was my my lockdown year. But that's how we ended up with Just Murdered.
So when you're writing this way, you're writing from the one media format into another. Whether was any of that made easy for you? I mean, the idea of 15 pages to 70,000 words sounds abominable, frankly. But were there good things? What was different to, let's say, writing your own novel?
Every crowd was fantastic to work with. So we went in with any question I had about the Fisher world or the characters or the direction they were ultimately going to take in season 2. I could just email and they'd get back to me straight away and say, oh, you can do that, or maybe not quite so much like that, things like that. It was great having the characters in a way already set there. So I knew who I was working with. One of the characters, as it turned out, he's changed quite a bit in season 2 compared to season 1. So we sort of got to a point where I was like, can you just shape him a little bit differently? Because I'd sort of gone off with their original descriptor of him. So there was a couple of little bits and pieces like that. In terms of the world itself, there was not much detail in that original script, but I didn't want to look at the final product, the DVDs and what have you, until I'd kind of gotten into it myself and found the voice I wanted. And of course, when I first got the gig, my initial thought was, I have to go back and reread all my Phryne Fishers. And then I thought, don't read the Phryne Fishers, don't read Phryne, because Peregrine is a very different character to Phryne, and I'm not Kerry Greenwood. So there was no way, if I tried to write exactly as Kerry wrote, it would have been disaster central. So I just had to find my voice in that world and find the voice for Peregrine and go with it.
Yes, because the 1960s voice is also going to be terribly different from the sort of the 1920s. And researching all of that, so you said there wasn't an awful lot of detail given to you. So were you sort of doing your own, or a lot of research, or were you able to use kind of the visuals of, because you write, there's so much about the accessories and the kind of the fashion. You've really rendered this world very sort of almost sort of tactile visual, if you know. So how did you?
I looked at a lot of the stills from the show online, because again, I didn't want to have the character voices of the actors in my head too much. So I was looking at some of the elements, so using particularly things like the car and the house, and the Adventuresses Club of the Antipodes, where they have their I don't want to say a clubhouse, but their headquarters is the beautiful National Trust property Labasa, and I have my history head on, so I know quite a bit about all the details of Labasa, and I can sort of picture those rooms and what that's like. So that helped. And I have a little bit of a vintage thing myself, so fashion is kind of I could go in that direction. But yeah, so there were a few key elements like the car that had to be there. But other things I had a lot of fun with being in 1960s with Peregrine.
And did you at any point sort of get to work with Karen or come across her at in your whole adventure of doing this? I imagine have you met the cast? Have you talked to the great Karen Greenwood herself?
I have indeed. So I was at the premiere for season 2. It was originally I was going to be on set, but then we had all these weird things. We extra people in lockdown. We don't talk about that, but it was, you couldn't bring in extra people. So that sort of got shelved. But yes, so we were lucky to get the premiere in at the Sun Theatre, and so yes, met everyone there. Saw Kerry, and she was absolutely lovely, and she gave me that beautiful puff quote for the cover, which was really lovely. And then she told me she meant it, which was even better.
Oh dear. That was one in the eye for the publishing industry. I'm sorry. Yeah, interesting. That's lovely.
But you do always, there's always that little corner of doubt in your mind, like, did she really like it? We all have this imposter syndrome thing going on. So it was lovely. It was just lovely that every cloud liked the work that I did for them. So that was the main thing.
Will you be doing more writing for them, or do you know what the plans are for it?
Don't know what the plans are at this stage. I think the world is still a very topsy-turvy place, so
yeah,
things get mentioned and away, and then they come back. So
we're very good at wait and see, aren't we? We have to be. So talking about back to sort of your connection with media and things. Your Alex Clayton series, have we anything interesting happening there? A little bird told me.
Bits of news about that. So the first thing is that the most recent Alex book, which came out last year, The Shifting Landscape, got the Reader's Choice Award in the Sisters in Crime Davitt Awards. Thank you, shown here by Katie. But
that was wonderful. Yes.
The other super duper exciting thing is that the entire Alex Clayton series has been optioned by Magpie Pictures for a television series. So
that is so exciting.
Yes, very, very exciting. So we have, again, in that little sort of window, we had some lovely face-to-face meetings and spent a couple of days working on an 8-episode pitch effectively and the story for each pitch, because this is the reverse process of the 15 pages into 70,000. This is each book becomes an episode effectively. So we devised another 5 episodes for our 8-episode series, and there's some beautiful people have come on board as script writers and story consultant. And at the moment, it's effectively being pitched to the people with the deep pockets overseas. So that's kind of where we are. And again, it's just that sort of little sort of hiatus-y period where we keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But I think Magpie Pictures are hugely enthusiastic and have lovely vision for the show, and you're talking about locations in Melbourne, so it's going to have a very Melbourne feel of laneways and docks and things like that. So it's very exciting.
Yes, it'll be very, very thrilling. So you'll be working on the actual screen or screenplay or script writing for some of that?
I think just in a consulting capacity. So, yes, so they have the people who really know what they're doing with script writing to do the heavy lifting on that.
Oh, yes, but you're becoming quite an expert in your changing over your formats. Well, that is really superb news. So you'll keep us all informed about, particularly because you know me, I'm terribly interested to know who in the long run would get to play Hogarth. Got any dogs in there?
That's the question that's been coming up most of all, Katie.
Of course it has. And for dog people, that's one of the most important questions out there. Tell me something, and this is something that I've been talking about quite recently with, my other booksellers, and with people in publishing. We're quite interested in this idea that a book, and this is talking to you more as an author and maybe as a reader, that, kind of the nirvana or the most sought after contract for an author at the moment is to be able to say, and we got the film deal. What do you make of that? Do you think writers, you don't write, or do you write thinking this would make a great film? And what do you make of that whole, it's going to be made into a film? Is the book not enough?
I'm a book person, so I see this, I'm probably saying the wrong thing, but if I love a book, I perhaps tend to wait and see what the sort of feedback is on the adaptation before I'll go there, because if you absolutely love a book, and things have to get changed. I've discovered that firsthand, that that's a very different media, and you have to you can do a nice quick scene change in television or film that when I was looking at that in the script, I can't do. I'm going to write another chapter just to get us from that point to that point, and they've just gone, scene change.
Yes.
But there's but the other way around applies too. You can layer a book in many different ways, and so that you can bring the readers along with you more slowly and draw things out, and you can perhaps have more layers to a character in a way that perhaps would be a turn. If a viewing audience just saw that character, they'd think, what's his problem? Why doesn't he just do X, Y, Z? But you can have that sort of ticking away in the back of a book, so they go, he's a bit worried about. So there's sort of both sides to it, but some adaptations are fantastic too. Having said that, there's I suppose I tend to go back to classics. So I think like Rebecca, wasn't that a great movie? But wasn't that a great book?
Wasn't that a great book?
Yeah, 39 Steps, another great book.
But have you ever done it the other way around? Have you ever watched the film first and then said that'll make me go? I'm only saying because that happened to me when I watched the 1956 version of War and Peace. And War and Peace was a book I'd sort of said, it's like Ulysses, I'm never going to read it, because I was like that at that age. It was just everybody was reading it, so I'm not going to. But I watched the film and I, of course, fell in love with Merle Oberon, and I don't know which actress it was, but I think I was slightly more interested in the actor at that stage. And I said, I will definitely have to read the book, because I knew there were things I was missing. But have you ever done it that way, or are you really... I am a book first person in general, but...
I think probably the only ones I would have done it probably would be Raymond Chandler. So I think I would have seen Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade before I went and read The Maltese Falcon.
Yes, okay.
So yeah, and those would be the ones that would have been movie first. And that's poses a really interesting aspect to your question, because they're both actually quite brilliant, but there's a lot of differences between the two. So
yes, I think one of the other comments, I mean, my own daughter read Sally Rooney's Normal People and then watched the film or the TV series. I don't know, because I didn't. Being very much a book person, and found them very different, but raved about both. So it's one of those things where, you get probably different emphases from the different media. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, and I have seen sort of in a couple of the online book clubs and things, that once or twice the comments come up that, oh, this reads as though it was written specifically to be made into a movie or to be made, and it's not a complimentary comment when it's written like that. So really. It's interesting. Whereas, and it will be a book that it's, one of those ones that 50 people will be raving about it, and the other 50 will be like, couldn't finish. So, which is what we love about books, because there's something for everyone. So
yeah, it is what we love about books. Talking about loving our books, anything coming up on the horizon that you are very excited about? I mean, I like to talk to my authors about the books that are out there, books they've read, so that I know that you, my beloved customers, will sit there going, "Oh, that's a really great idea." Anything I've loads, but I'd love to hear anything that you're excited by.
I haven't read yet, but it's out now, and it's the A Life in Words, the Les Carlyon book, because he's a beautiful writer, so I'm looking forward to reading that. There's a book, I think it's about to come out, called The Invention of Sicily, which is a history of the island. So that's kind of my armchair travel-y thing with history mixed in for the moment. And I think probably the crime one I think it's about to come out is, I think it's the Two Sisters Detective Agency, which is the new Candace Fox James Patterson.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So those are my coming soon to be read.
Oh, yes. Ones. Because there is an incredible amount of writing out there, and a lot of crime writing out there. Now, you're very well placed. There is this upsurge at the moment in what are you doing? In rural, sorry, the dog has just gone, Murphy, look at you. Oh, look at my little friend. I'm not sure he should be in here, and he's going to eat the microphone now. Hello, beautiful. You better go. Yes. He must have heard you were there, Kath, and said, I want her treats.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Dog for a voice.
Yes. I'll swap the questions. So, yes, rural crime. I think I've already possibly asked you about this, but I think there is this huge upsurge of interest in certain genres, and at the moment, the rural noir Australian is making waves. Is this a reading area for you, or any comments on that? Because I find it quite interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting that this is what's being bought overseas, particularly as well.
It is really interesting, isn't it? That it's specifically Australian crime writers. It's that outback feel, which is you can't say it's a take on the English murder mystery, because they tend to be, it's a much gentler countryside. But there is that sort of the American, the Midwest. There are those sort of types of crime things in American literature. But I think in terms of Australia, it's nice that Australian authors are sort of getting out of the city. I think it's something that's always been there, but it's just we're finding new ways to sort of explore the country, and there are some great authors. I mean, Chris Hammer's done some great things. Yes, Sarah Bale is always brilliant, always magnificent. So, and Jane Harper with her The Dry and what have you. So there's some great authors, and there's a lot more coming through, which is the really interesting thing. So it's I mean, I read outback or rural noir, but I think it's just part of the bigger picture of my very large teetering reading pile. So.
Yes, I got one of those. One other question I was quite interested in, because you were talking about the transfer of book into film, and there are these comments that I have come across recently when people are talking about the books that they're reading and why they like them, and you mentioned this idea of that was meant to be made for a movie. Another comment I find I'm listening to quite often in book clubs or from things is that I didn't really like the character, or it wasn't that they say not relatable. I still can't get my head around this word, someone being relatable, but I know what they mean. I can't connect to that person. You've written non-fiction, obviously exploring like the Schoolgirl Strangler. You're exploring someone who is, you as a non-fiction writer, you're not trying to create a likable person, you're trying to discover who might be the personality behind this thing. What do you make of this, and do you consider this when you're writing, that in order for your reader to come along on the journey with you, you have to like them?
It's a really tricky question. I don't consider it at all. My characters live in my head the way they are, and sometimes I argue with them, but invariably they get their way and they get to do what they want to do in the way they want to do it.
Invariably they'd lose.
But so no, the characters are as they are. They do, they do. I don't sort of think, but what are people going to say? What if they don't like her? But in terms of reading, there are unlikable characters out there, but I think the voice of the overarching voice of the story that the author puts in there takes you through. So I think, Sherlock Holmes is really not a particularly likable gentleman.
No.
And Watson is just a dithering, he's the stooge, isn't he? But why? I don't understand. He's a bit of a dolt, really, even though he was a military doctor. He's got brains, but he's a dolt in the story. And Holmes is just off going, don't you get it? And, pushing people out of the way. And he's not really a likable gentleman when you think about it, but people like Conan Doyle because he's got that fabulous overarching voice and the way he crafts those stories and takes us through, and Holmes's snug little living room and his violin and even his little syringe of illicit substances and what have you. Lovely. We love it. And there's there are other characters. There's I can't think of the author now, a series called Johannes Cabal, the Necromancer. So this is about a guy trying to bring the dead back to life, and he's a thoroughly unlikable person as he tries to discover the secret to life. But it's just such a great story voice that you want, you actually feel sympathy for this guy when things don't go his way, and it's a really interesting thing. So I don't mind characters, characters that I don't like. I can live with that, and I can go into the story. Boring characters, that's another thing.
That is another.
So I think that you've got to have that overarching voice and story, so that characters are human. Characters are human. Yes. Characters are real. Characters are human, and nobody's perfect. So we like their faults. We like them sometimes if they're mean. And we want to go and see what happens in the end.
You often say, and you've said this in very early interviews when we started talking about Alex Clayton, you said, well, she lives inside my head, and that she was possibly your starting point, that she came first and the story came. Does Peregrine live inside your head as well?
I think she does now. She's got such a bright, vivid 1960s world. When I was doing the research, I actually got a couple of films downloaded from the National Film and Sound Archive on, Melbourne in the 1960s, and it was basically like not a tourism, a migrate to Australia kind of thing, and so it had that really uplifting BBC kind of narrative, and then just a lot of nothing, just a lot of weird background music and cutaway scenes, different aspects of Melbourne. But it was, the clothes were bright and there was that sense of optimism. So she's in this happy bubble, and she's such a great character. She's a rough diamond. So she's got, which sounds like a cliche. Well, it is a cliche, but she is. She's come from she didn't have the privileged background that her aunt had. No. She's come from a rougher upbringing, and suddenly she's got this wealth and this world, and she's grabbing it by the hands. So
she's resourceful and she's plucky and she's a bit sassy and she's also sort of kind of sweet. I very much liked her, I must admit. So that was a wonderful sort of addition to your character library. Kath, I think we're going to have to leave it there because I can hear the dog. So I'll have to go and give him his dinner. Love to your dogs. It has been lovely talking to you, and I'm really, millions of congratulations for your David Award and for all of these wonderful things that are happening. And I'm hoping that we will be No pressure, babes, but I'm hoping there will be more Alex Clayton out there in the future. So watch this space.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Katie. It's been an absolute delight talking to you.
And you. All right. That's it. We've had a lovely little chat. I hope you've enjoyed it. And watch this space, because I may have some more authors to have a chat with and to bring to you. Look after yourselves. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in the shop soon. But in the meantime, I will try and bring authors to you. Bye-bye.